My name is Thao. For a year, I worked as an assistant at Sacred Whispers Temple, a private spiritual center in the heart of the city. People from all walks of life came to us. Desperate parents worried about their children, business owners seeking prosperity, young lovers hoping for a harmonious future, and the sick searching for a miracle cure. The main hall was always filled with the scent of incense, the murmur of prayers, and the hushed, hopeful whispers of clients seeking guidance from Masterly, the temple's revered spiritual leader. I genuinely believed I was helping people find peace and solutions to their problems. But behind the mystical aura and the comforting rituals, Sacred Whispers Temple was a meticulously crafted trap. It was a place where human vulnerability was ruthlessly exploited, where faith was a commodity to be bought and sold at exorbitant prices, and where fear was skillfully manipulated for profit. Looking back, I wasn't just facilitating spiritual solace. I was an unwitting participant in a sophisticated scheme designed to fleece desperate souls, leaving them not with peace, but with empty pockets and shattered spirits. My initial duties involved greeting clients, preparing ceremonial items, and recording donations. The first red flag was the consultation fees. While advertised as voluntary donations, there was a clearly implied minimum, and it was substantial. Masterly, a charismatic man with a profound voice and an almost hypnotic gaze, would spend hours with clients, listening intently, before delivering his prophecies and solutions. Thao, he'd instruct me, his voice a low, gravelly whisper, the longer they talk, the more desperate they reveal themselves to be. The more desperate they are, the more willing they are to invest in their spiritual well-being. Make them feel heard, make them feel understood, then make them understand the seriousness of their situation. Then came the issue of fear-mongering and fabricated curses. Masterly had an uncanny ability to identify a client's deepest anxieties, illness, financial troubles, relationship problems. He would then subtly suggest that their misfortunes weren't just bad luck, but the result of negative energy, ancestral curses, or malevolent spirits attaching themselves to them. He would use vague but terrifying language, painting a picture of looming disaster. I remember a young couple came in, worried about their struggling business. Masterly, after a lengthy reading, told them their shop was plagued by bad spirits of greed from a past tenant, and without immediate intervention, their business would collapse entirely, potentially leading to family discord and illness. The couple, terrified, immediately asked for a solution. The solutions were where the real scam began: exorbitant rituals and offerings. To remove a curse or attract good fortune, clients were told they needed complex, multi-day rituals requiring rare and expensive sacred items. These items, special herbs, consecrated talismans, unique incense, were all sourced directly from the temple at prices hundreds of times their actual value. A simple herbal concoction would be sold for thousands, marketed as ancient remedies blessed by the purest spirits. The couple with the struggling business ended up paying for a 7-day purification ritual, which involved daily offerings of gold leaf, rare jade, and elaborate food spreads that were then quietly packed away by the temple staff. The ritual amounted to Masterly chanting vaguely and waving some smoke around. Their business, predictably, did not improve. When they questioned it, Masterly simply blamed their lack of sufficient faith or residual negative karma. The most disturbing practice involved long-term spiritual guidance and dependency creation. Clients who were particularly vulnerable or those with chronic issues were encouraged to become disciples or patrons of the temple, requiring regular, costly checkups and spiritual tune-ups. This created a continuous revenue stream, keeping people emotionally and financially tethered to the temple, exploiting their fear of stepping away from their spiritual protection. The chilling realization dawned on me: we weren't guiding, we were entrapping. The incense, the chants, the comforting words, they were all part of an elaborate charade. Every time I watched a desperate client hand over their life savings, driven by fear and false hope, I felt a cold knot in my stomach. The spirit trap wasn't just about financial exploitation, it was about preying on the deepest human vulnerabilities, systematically shattering peace and hope for endless profit, leaving behind not enlightenment, but profound despair. The manipulation of fear and faith at Sacred Whispers Temple was more pervasive than I could have imagined. Masterly wasn't just subtly suggesting problems. He was actively inventing calamities and preying on the most vulnerable, particularly those facing life-or-death situations. I remember a woman, frail and desperate, came seeking a cure for her husband's aggressive cancer. She had already exhausted all medical options and was clinging to any last hope. Masterly, after a long meditation, told her that her husband's illness was caused by a vengeful ancestor spirit and could only be appeased through a grand purification ritual requiring an unimaginable sum of money, enough to bankrupt her family. He presented it as their only hope, playing on her profound love and desperation. The ritual involved burning vast quantities of special incense, which I knew was just cheap, chemically treated wood, and performing obscure dances that seemed to serve no purpose other than to prolong the ceremony and justify the cost. Her husband, predictably, worsened and eventually passed away, leaving her not with peace, but with crippling debt and the crushing guilt of a failed spiritual intervention. Then came the fake prophecies and staged miracles. Masterly had an extensive network of informants. He'd subtly gather information about clients' lives, their financial struggles, family disputes, or health issues through casual conversation with assistants like me, or even by listening in on phone calls. During readings, he would then present this information as if he were divining it from the spiritual realm, stunning clients with his accuracy. If a client's business started doing slightly better due to their own efforts, he'd immediately claim it was the direct result of his blessings and demand further offerings. If things went wrong, it was always the client's lack of faith or failure to complete all necessary rituals. The most disturbing aspect was the psychological and sometimes physical harm. For some deeply distressed clients, Masterly would prescribe bizarre cleansing rituals. These included fasting for extended periods, consuming unpleasant concoctions, often just herbs mixed with water, but sometimes making them ill, or even sleeping in specific, uncomfortable positions for days. While presented as spiritual purification, these practices often exacerbated existing health conditions or caused significant psychological distress, pushing already vulnerable individuals further into despair and dependence. They became utterly reliant on Masterly's guidance, their own judgment clouded by fear and manipulation. I remember a young man, suffering from severe depression, came to us after conventional therapy failed him. Masterly convinced him that his depression was caused by a demon of sorrow and instructed him to isolate himself, stop taking his prescribed medication, and perform daily exorcism rituals involving self-deprivation. The young man's condition deteriorated rapidly, almost leading to tragic consequences. The thought that we were actively harming people under the guise of spiritual healing made my stomach churn with disgust and fear. The pressure to remain silent, to be a part of this monstrous deception, became suffocating. My colleagues, seasoned by years of this, either seemed genuinely convinced of Masterly's powers or had simply become desensitized, their consciences dulled by the constant flow of money. Don't question the master, Thao, they'd warn me. He sees all. And besides, it's just business. People want to believe. So we help them believe. My sleep became restless, haunted by the desperate eyes of the sick, the heartbroken faces of the bereaved, and the chilling realization that behind the incense smoke, there was a calculated, cruel darkness. I started seeing the sacred items as mere props, the blessings as curses, and the comforting words as manipulative chains. The spirit trap wasn't just about draining pockets, it was about enslaving minds, shattering hopes, and causing profound, often irreparable, damage to the most vulnerable souls. I knew I couldn't continue. The price of my silence was becoming too high, threatening to consume not just my job, but my very humanity. The weight of my silent complicity became an unbearable burden. Every plume of incense smoke felt like a veil hiding a dark truth, every chant a siren song luring the desperate to their ruin. I saw the faces of the sick, the heartbroken, the financially devastated, all clutching at false hope. Masterly's mystical aura now reeked of deceit, his comforting words. Chains binding souls in an invisible prison. I knew I couldn't be a part of this spiritual charade any longer. The price of my integrity, my humanity, was simply too high. The final breaking point arrived with a woman who had lost her son in an accident. She was utterly broken, seeking any sign, any connection to him. Masterly, with his practiced solemnity, told her her son's spirit was trapped in limbo due to unresolved karma, and only a series of elaborate, immensely expensive liberation rituals could set him free. He played on her grief, demanding payment for her son's supposed peace. She emptied her bank account, sold her last pieces of jewelry, driven by a love so profound it blinded her to the monstrous exploitation. Watching her, frail and weeping, hand over the last of her savings for a lie, something inside me snapped. That evening, I couldn't sleep. The mother's face, ravaged by grief and hope, mingled with the countless others I had witnessed being exploited. I thought of the Hippocratic Oath I had learned in my fleeting medical studies. The basic human decency that was being so brazenly violated here. The sacred space had become a slaughterhouse of souls. The next morning, fueled by a cold, righteous anger, I walked straight into Master Li's private chamber, where he was performing a blessing for a wealthy, unsuspecting client. Master Li, I stated, my voice shaking slightly but firm. I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. He slowly turned, his face devoid of its usual placid calm, eyes narrowing into sharp, predatory slits. Leaving, Thao? And go where? You have learned too much. You think you can just walk away from the gifts you've been given, from the secrets you've witnessed? He rose, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. The spiritual world has long arms, child. We know everything about you, about your family. If you dare to speak ill of this temple, to betray the sacred trust, your life will be filled with misfortune you cannot imagine. Be wise. Be silent. His threats, cloaked in spiritual menace, were terrifying. But the image of that grieving mother, her empty hands, her shattered faith, gave me an unwavering resolve. I don't care, I said, meeting his cold gaze. I won't be silent anymore. I walked out, leaving behind the heavy sin of incense, the echoing chants, and the carefully constructed illusion of sanctity. I didn't look back. I left my assistant's robes folded on a dusty altar, shedding the last vestiges of my life at Sacred Whispers Temple. It's been a year since I left. I now volunteer at a small community support center, helping people recover from various forms of exploitation, including spiritual fraud. I also study psychology, hoping to understand the depths of human vulnerability. The pay is non-existent, but the sense of purpose is boundless. Yet, the shadows of Sacred Whispers Temple still linger. Every time I see someone seeking solace from a spiritual guide, without critical thought, every time I hear about a new miracle worker demanding exorbitant fees, a cold dread washes over me. The faces of those whose faith was exploited, whose grief was monetized, whose very souls were entrapped. They are the true ghosts of the spirit trap. Haunting reminders of the dark underbelly where the sacred becomes profane, and the deepest human needs are mercilessly preyed upon. My experience in the spiritual and psychic services industry revealed a terrifying truth. Your most profound hopes and fears can be ruthlessly exploited. Unscrupulous individuals and organizations prey on your desperation, turning your search for peace or guidance into a devastating financial and emotional nightmare. So, how can you protect yourself from the spirit trap? Always remember to be deeply skeptical of anyone demanding exorbitant fees for spiritual services, especially those promising guaranteed solutions to complex life problems. Question any diagnosis of curses or negative energies that require immediate, costly rituals or offerings. Never hand over large sums of money or valuable assets without independent consultation or a clear, transparent explanation of what the funds are for. Be wary of individuals who isolate you from your family or friends, or who pressure you into making decisions based on fear. If a spiritual guide claims to have all the answers and discourages you from seeking conventional help, medical, psychological, legal, trust your instincts and walk away. Your faith and well-being are too precious to be gambled on false promises. If Tao's story made you look at the world of spiritual guidance a little differently, remember to like this video. Share this crucial warning with everyone you know, and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another stark revelation. We'll continue to expose the hidden dangers in every profession. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, not every blessing comes from a benevolent source.